A man stood in the emergency room of the hospital with hunched shoulders. There were no flowers in his hands, as there usually are when you meet a woman in labor with a baby. His chapped and bitten lips were tightly pressed together. This was not how Ignat had imagined the meeting of the long-awaited heir. Oh, not like this. For so long he had dreamed of a son, a boy. And now the nurse brings him a package tied with a blue ribbon, and, without looking into his eyes, carefully passes it into his hands. She's embarrassed. Usually, when she hands the baby over, she congratulates the happy fathers. But in this situation, the words of congratulations would sound sacrilegious. The nurse is silent. She wants the man to leave quickly, taking the child. But Ignat is in no hurry. He holds the boy to himself, and a tear glistens in the corner of his eye. He looks around as if he doesn't believe it, and it seems to him that his son's mother is about to appear. Only she will not appear. The young nurse, and Ignat knows it. He has already been explained about the complications that arose during childbirth, about how Masha's heart stopped, about the fruitless attempts to conceive him. But your son was born healthy. A strong, healthy boy, they told Ignat, as if that could comfort him. Ignat held the baby wrapped in a blanket and tied with a blue ribbon. The baby wiggled and mewed. The man came to his senses. We've got to go. The poor nurse doesn't know where to put her eyes. She's so embarrassed. It's not her fault. Then whose fault is it? It's his fault. He insisted on having a third child. Masha didn't want to. She was tired. Tired of being alone. Ignat worked as a trucker and he got a lot of money for his trips as the man was in good standing. He and his wife lived well off. 2 daughters were growing up. And Masha complained that she was tired of being alone. Ignat bought a good, expensive car. Masha again dissatisfied. She said she didn't need a car, but a husband. When I got pregnant with my third, I wanted to terminate the pregnancy. But Ignat forbade it. He forbade it because he wanted a son so badly. Here he is, a son in his hands. And what to do with him now without Masha? You'll have to change jobs, that's understandable. You can't go on a voyage with 3 children in your arms. Still, Masha got what she wanted. She got it with her death. Ignat wanted to howl. Howl, sob, but he held on. There's a baby in his arms and we have to prepare for the funeral. Masha must be buried with dignity, which means you cannot give free rein to your emotions. Marina, a friend of his dead wife, was waiting for Ignat at home. The man used to be unkind to her. Marina annoyed him. She was always rubbing herself in their house, because she had no family of her own. Ignat expressed to Masha and asked that at least in his presence Marina was not in the house. And only now Ignat realized how unfair he was to his wife's plump friend. Marina was the first to come running when she learned the sad news. While Ignat was in a trance and could not realize what had happened, she took on the care of his daughters. The girls are still young. One is 7, the other 5. And, to be honest, Ignat, who was constantly on the move, did not know how to deal with them. Ignat reached home, but the boy became quite fussy. His cries resembled the meow of a kitten. The man guessed that the boy was hungry. What to do? What to feed him? Stunned by the news of his wife's death, Ignat did not think of such things. But Marina did. She had already bought bottles and baby food. Immediately took the boy out of Ignat's arms. "Oh, what little we are crying," said the woman, opening the blanket. "Oh, Ignat, look how light-colored he is. He doesn't look like you or Masha. And what's this on our cheek? Is it dirt?" Ignat looked at the boy, who had been swaddled by Marina while she was trying to wipe something off his white cheek. The baby was white-skinned, with very light fuzz on his head. Certainly didn't look like Ignat. Ignat is swarthy, black-haired, and Masha was dark. Marina rubbed the child's cheek so fiercely that the man was afraid. "You're gonna rub a hole in him. It hurts him. Let me see. It's not dirt at all. It's a birthmark." For a second Ignat had a suspicion that the baby was mixed up in the hospital. Where did they get such a white one, and even with a birthmark on his cheek? The thought flashed and vanished. The boy cried demandingly and wanted to eat. Marina took care of it, and Ignat said, "You do not worry about your son. I'll stay with him." Probably I'll move to you for a while. You don't have time for children now. It was as if Ignat woke up, took his eyes off the baby sucking greedily from the bottle. He let out a heavy sigh. Yes, Marin, thank you very much. I'll go order a funeral. And the wake should probably be ordered right away. Yes, I know a canteen. It's cheap. Don't. Ignat frowned. Don't go where it's cheap. I'm not going to save money for my Masha's funeral. But, Ignat, you have 3 children on your hands. You still have to raise them. You'll need the money. I have money, Ignat said rudely. Enough for everything. Ignat had money. It was not in vain that he did not get out of voyages. He had built a good, big house, bought a car, and had some savings. He dreamed of someday retiring from trucking and opening his own car service. And then he thought they would live with Masha and the children. Masha's funeral passed as if in a fog. Ignat acted by inertia, did everything that was required of him and held on, having fastened his heart with an iron rim. It seemed to the man all the time that if he loosened this invisible rim a little, he would collapse and would never get up again, drowning in his grief. The relatives came and spoke words of condolence. Ignat's only sibling, Sonia, couldn't come. They hadn't seen her for a couple of years already. She could have postponed her important affairs at such a moment. But Sonia lives in Moscow, holds some kind of position. A big shot. Instead of her presence, she sent Ignat some money and instructed him over the phone. Be strong, brother, be strong. You have children now. You wanted a son so much. So raise him. Give all the warmth to your children. Maybe they'll ease the grief of your loss. It's easy to say, bring up, if Ignat didn't know which side to approach the baby, and it was as if he was getting reacquainted with his daughters. What would he have done if it hadn't been for Marina? Marina stayed at Ignat's house even after the funeral. Ignat offered to pay her for babysitting services, and the woman quickly quit her main job. In order not to go crazy, Ignat took up his long-standing idea of opening a car service center. He already had a 2-story garage attached to his house for this purpose, so he didn't have to go far away. But, returning to the house, man more and more often found his son wet, crying in the crib and indifferent to his tears. Marina. One day Ignat boiled up. Marina, I pay you money for what? Why Igorka again wet and, most likely, hungry? What are you even doing? If this goes on, I'll find another nanny for my children. Ah, that's it. Marina's eyes filled with tears. This is your gratitude. Ignat? Look at your daughters. They're like dolls. With them I'm happy to mess around, because they're yours. You don't see anything, Ignat. Marina mumbled and covered her mouth with a plump palm. Her wet eyes widened fearfully and her expression became as if she had said too much. Ignat was stunned. I don't understand. What do you mean, your daughters? And whose Igor do you think he is? I'm sorry. Ignat, Marina whispered. About the dead or good or nothing. I would never tell you this, but you're not blind yourself. Look at Igor and at yourself, at your daughters. You were away all the time and Masha was alone. She's a woman, she was bored. Ignat's hands stained with fuel oil clenched into fists and he involuntarily took a step towards Marina. His face must have been so intimidating that the woman was frightened. Ignat, I'm not lying to you. I even have proof. Picture in my phone. I'll show you now. Marina jumped out of the room, returned with the phone in his hands. Quickly found in it the necessary photo. She brought the screen to Ignat's face. The man's eyes blurred. He didn't want to see it. To see a stranger's white-haired man sitting somewhere at a holiday table and putting his arm around Masha's shoulders. His Masha. You see, Ignat, it's some business traveler. He stayed in our city only a few days. I took a picture of him and Masha. He's half sideways here. You can't see that he has a birthmark on his cheek in the shape of a drop. Exactly like Jaeger's. Marina was talking, and the phone in her hands was moving around. Ignat snatched the phone and broke it, hitting it against his knee. He wanted to erase that picture from the screen, erase it forever, never to see it again. The man wasn't thinking straight at the time. He jumped out of the house, but instead of going back to the garage, he went to the bar. Just like that, in a work overalls with dirty hands. Ignat got purposely drunk, so that the alcohol would erase the picture from Marina's cell phone from his memory. The photo can be destroyed, but a living reminder lying at home, in the crib and requiring constant care. What to do with Igor? Until that moment, looking at the boy, Ignat had felt something like reverent tenderness. One single moment had turned everything in his soul upside down. Now he hated that birthmark, that white blonde hair. Another man's baby, another man's son. Masha, how could you? I worked only for you and the children. Late at night, Ignat returned to his house. He came back drunk and knocked down everything in his path. Marina was awake. She put her shoulder and helped the man to the bedroom, pulled off his shoes and lay down beside him, stroked his chest and whispered, Ignat, not everyone is like Masha. I, for example, would never betray you. The man was almost asleep, but from Marina's words he jerked and pulled her sharply to him. The next morning Ignat felt very lousy, but Marina fluttered like a butterfly and had already moved her things into his bedroom. The man regretted what had happened, and more than anything else in the world did not want to start a conversation about Igor again. But it was Marina who started it. Ignat, I understand you are very hurt, but since you now know everything, what will you do with Jaeger? I don't understand. What do you mean, what to do? Do you think there are any options? Of course there are. He's not your son, he's a complete stranger. He'll always be a reminder of Masha's infidelity. Let's put him in an orphanage. Frowning, hungover Ignat opened the refrigerator and took out a jar of pickles. He was about to take it to the table, going to drink the brine, when Marina's last words about the orphanage sounded. The jar slipped out of the man's hands and, hitting the floor, shattered into sharp, large shards. Jaeger cried in the room, as if realizing that his fate was being decided. Ignat stepped towards Marina, stepping on one of the cucumbers scattered on the floor, and spoke in an icy tone. Listen to me carefully. I say once and I will not repeat. We will not return to this conversation. No one must never know that Igor is not my son. He's registered to me, so I'll raise him. And you, if you want to be with me, you will keep quiet and take care of all children equally. Do you understand me? Marina nodded hastily and fussed. Taking a floor cloth from under the sink, she began to collect the spreading cucumber brine. The woman had learned her lesson and, because she really wanted to be with Ignat, never again stuttered about an orphanage for Igor. In front of the man she pretended to be a caring mother. But only Ignat was not in the house so often, and then growing up Jaeger got a blow from his stepmother. In time Ignat himself began to realize that it was easy to say, but much harder to do. It was very difficult to treat Igor as his daughters. The man tried, but at the mere sight of the boy, his heart felt as if it were enveloped by a crust of ice. He could say the same words to both the girls and Igor. Only when addressing his daughters there was warmth in his voice, and Jaeger felt only ice. No one saw Jaeger off to first grade. It should have been done by Marina, but she brought the boy to the gate of the school and, pointing him where to line up his class, pushed his back. You see that aunt and the children over there? That's your teacher and your class. Go to them and do what they say. You'll run home yourself later, it's not far. I've got things to do. Mom whistled off somewhere. Igor, swallowing another offense and terribly embarrassed, approached his first teacher. He didn't have flowers in his hands like the other children. The line was starting, and behind the line of boys and girls stood their excited parents. They tried to take pictures, corrected bows and ties of their children. Igor, pouting his lips, stood alone. After the rally, the children were taken to the classroom. The teacher held a class hour, met everyone and let them go home. Lessons were to begin on September 2nd. Parents took their first graders home, and Igor walked alone down the school corridor. Hey, white-haired. He heard a voice from under the stairs. What's that on your cheek? Birds pooped on it. Go wash your face. Under the stairs, the older boys cackled. Igor knew that they realized that on his cheek he has a birthmark, just decided to mock him. You go wash it yourself. Tried to answer the boy as rudely as possible. What did you say? A high school student came out from under the stairs and grabbed Igor's jacket. He yanked on himself and the jacket cracked. The high school student was stopped by the shout of some teacher passing by. Igor slipped out of the kid's hands, but it was too late. His jacket was torn in 2 places. The boy ran out of the school building, breathing heavily. Mom was right. He knew the way home, but he didn't want to go there at all. Mom would get angry again, call him bad names, maybe even hit him, and Dad would remain silent, looking at him with his heavy gaze. Mommy is not Igor's kin. She always told the boy that. But Daddy is his kin. Today is the 1st of September, and he promised Igor's sisters that after school he would take them to a cafe to eat ice cream. He didn't promise Igor that, but the boy hoped so much. Now this hope was not destined to come true. For a new, torn jacket, of course, his father would not take him anywhere. Is that why Daddy loves his sisters more than him? What did Jaeger do wrong? You can feel it in everything. He takes the girls on car rides, takes them to the countryside, and leaves Jaeger at home. Dad even teaches the girls to drive, but he won't let him, a boy, near the wheel. He can hug and kiss them, but he doesn't touch Igor, explaining that he is a boy and he doesn't need any tenderness. But Igor wanted so much to cuddle up to his father sometimes, and for him to stroke his head, the way he strokes his sisters. The sisters did not study very well, and, going to school, Igor promised himself that he would definitely get only A's. Maybe then his father would look at him differently and even praise him. And here it is, the first day of school and a torn jacket. Igor is used to spankings and hurtful words from his stepmother, but Dad, he too will be dissatisfied with him. The boy walked down the sidewalk, shuffling the soles of his new shoes and lowering his head low. He was just about to reach the bus stop, where the bus stood with its doors wide open. Without hesitation, the boy ducked through those doors. He would go far away, away from his mother and his father's hard stare. Jaeger sat near the window and looked at the unfamiliar streets. People were getting on and off the bus, and Jaeger sat there until the bus made a half circle and finally stopped. "Boy!" the driver shouted, peeking out from behind the partition. "This is the terminus. Where were you going?" "To here," Igor muttered, seeing that he was all alone in the bus and slipping out of the open doors. He stepped out onto the asphalted platform and realized that it was the outskirts of the city, because very near, at a distance of 1 block, the forest begins. Jaeger walked toward the trees. "I'll leave. I'll go into the forest," he thought angrily. "I'll go far, far away and live there. I'll build myself a hut. I'll eat berries. They don't need me, so let them take the girls to the cafe. Let them drive them around in a car and stroke their heads, and I'll live alone." Ignat straightened up from under the hood of a stranger's car and wiped his dirty hands on a rag. "That's it. Finish without me," he shouted to his assistants. "My kids are probably home from school by now. I promised to take them to a cafe." Walking home with a wide step, the man thought that Igor should be taken to the cafe with him. The boy was always walking around as if he were drowned in water. No matter how hard Ignat tries, the boy feels unloved, and he, after all, today went to the 1st grade. In the hallway, Ignat met dressed up and excited daughters. Daddy, are we going to the cafe by car? And on the rides, then go to the rides?" "Of course we will. Now I just rinse," smiled Ignat. "Where's Igor? Let him also gather." Marina, standing behind her daughters, ran her eyes. "Will you take Igor? You did not say." "'Kay, I'll go look for him." "What do you mean, look for him? Where is he?" "There's a thing." Marina averted her eyes. "Igor has not yet come from school." "What do you mean he hasn't come? You were supposed to take him out and bring him back. Did you leave him there alone? It's his first time today." "Oh, what's it take to get to school?" "Oh, it's a block and a half." "A block and a half. Jaeger knows the way. Why should I be there with him at the lineup?" "I went to the store. He didn't have school today. There should only be a line and a class hour." Ignat shouted. "He should have been home a long time ago." "Where's Igor?" "Go look for him while I wash up." Eat ice cream girls that day did not manage to eat ice cream, because neither Marina nor Ignat did not find Igor. The boy came out of school, and then, as in water, vanished. Toward evening, Ignat ran to the police. When Igor did not show up and at night, he could not find a place for himself from anxiety. The man was angry with Marina, angry at himself for never being able to treat Igor the way he treated his daughters. The man was almost certain that this was the reason the boy had gone missing. He should have postponed work and gone with him to the 1st of September, as Igor had dreamed. Ignat did not go to bed. Together with his employees from the car service, he combed the streets nearest to the school. They looked in every alley, under every bush. Igor was nowhere to be found. The next day Ignat, together with the volunteers, pasted flyers with Jaeger's photo around the city. He put them on every bus stop, on every pole, and it yielded results. After lunch, the police received a call from the bus driver. The man stated with certainty that it was the missing boy he dropped off at the final stop, near the forest. The search moved into the woods. On the 3rd day, the volunteers were joined by concerned residents of the city. Ignat did not sleep for the 3rd day. Having dropped by his house for a minute, he saw a woman there whom he did not immediately recognize. Next to Marina sat his older sister Sonia, whom the man had not seen for several years. Sonia called on the evening of September 1st to congratulate the children on their first day of school. That's when she found out her nephew was missing. "I dropped everything and came to help." Sonia hugged Ignat. "How is the search going now?" "We are combing the forest," the man answered his sister. "How can you help now?" "What do you mean, what?" "I'll go into the woods with you." "Good." Ignat nodded. "Marina, are you coming?" "I won't leave the girls alone." Marina hesitated. Ignat nodded. With Marina it was all clear to him, and he would deal with it later. The main thing now was to find Igor. He went to the car and his sister followed. On the passenger seat were leaflets with Igor's picture. To sit down, Sonia took them in her hands and cried out, "God, how your son looks like our grandfather." "Ignat, does he have a birthmark on his cheek in the form of a drop?" "Wow, it's been passed down through 2 generations." Ignat had already started driving, but from his sister's words he sharply pressed the brake pedal to the floor. He braked so that Sonia almost hit the windshield. "What did you say? What does Igor's birthmark have to do with it?" "Ignat, what are you doing?" Sonia widened her eyes at her brother. "How long have you been looking at the family album? Do you remember what your grandfather looks like, who died in the war? He died young, that's why there are pictures of him only when he was young. He's very blonde. Your Igor looks amazingly like him. And what's more, our grandfather had the same birthmark. And on his left cheek, too." Ignat's cheekbones were getting jaundiced. Without saying a word, he turned the car around and went back to his house. "Wait for me here." He threw to his sister and rushed to the gate. The man burst into the house with such a furious expression on his face that Marina was immediately frightened. "Something with Igor? They found him?" "Not with Igor, but with you," yelled Ignat. "I know everything. I know that you lied to me about Masha and that he is not my son." "How did you know?" Marina turned white. "It doesn't matter how I found out. Why did you do it?" "Because I loved you. I wanted you to forget Masha. I wanted to give birth to my child, not to wipe the snot of this Igor." "Why are you yelling?" "I didn't succeed. You didn't put him in an orphanage." Ignat's hands itched, very itchy. He knew it was better to leave before he hit Marina. "When I come back, I don't want a trace of you in this house. You hear me? Don't let me see you again. Never." Ignat abruptly turned around and ran to the car where his sister was waiting. There were many people near the edge of the forest. Ignat saw the joyful faces and his heart beat more often. What was everyone so happy about? Is it really? Turning off the car, Ignat ran, looking at the smiling face of a young volunteer pointing him to the ambulance. There, in the ambulance, sat a blanket-wrapped Igor. The boy's face creased when he saw his dad. "Daddy, I'm sorry, I wanted to go back, but I got lost." "Daddy, I'm sorry. You forgive me, son." Ignat picked up the boy and held him tightly and firmly against him. Tears were running down his cheeks. The man did not cry like this even at Masha's funeral. "I'm guilty before you, son. I'm very sorry. I promise you, everything will be different from now on."